The first sign that the Santa Fe property was hiding more than just a reclusive actor came not from the body on the mudroom floor, but from the thermographic imaging drone that the FBI flew over the estate at 3 a.m. The drone was looking for residual heat signatures from the 2 deceased individuals already identified. Instead, it found a cold spot, a perfect rectangular void of cold, 40 feet beneath the main library, where the bedrock temperature should have been consistent. The entrance was a masterwork of obsessive privacy, a hingeless bookshelf coated in magnetic paint, triggered only by a specific sequence of rare earth magnets embedded in a leather-bound copy of The Day of the Jackal. When the tactical team finally forced the mechanism, they didn't find gold or art, or even the dark secrets of Hollywood. They found a chair, a microscope, and a petri dish that would later test positive for a pathogen the CDC had classified as eradicated in 1999. On the surface, the death of the 2-time Oscar winner looked like a tragic, isolated incident of domestic collapse. An advanced Alzheimer's patient, a devoted wife, and a dead dog. The Santa Fe Sheriff's Department was ready to write it off as a horrible accident until the toxicology report flagged the wife's lungs. They weren't filled with carbon monoxide or drugs. They were filled with a protein spike that indicated a hemorrhagic fever. That fever hasn't been seen in North America outside of a Level 4 biosecurity lab in 27 years. When the investigators realized the dead dog in the crate had the same biological markers in its saliva, they knew they weren't looking at a crime of passion. They were looking at a containment breach, and the tunnel was the leak. The first hint that the property was a contradiction was the generator. When the maintenance worker finally gained access, he noted that the main house was running on backup power, even though the grid was active. The security log showed the front gate hadn't opened in 10 days, but the basement power draw was immense, far more than a wine cellar or a safe room required. Inside the main bedroom, the scene was pristine, too pristine. Betsy Arakawa's body was found near a bathroom closet, but her hair was brushed. Her nails were clean. It looked like she had prepared herself for a doctor's visit that never came. Gene Hackman was found in the foyer, his walking cane pointing not toward the door, but toward the floor. Toward the library. Toward the floor, directly above the cold spot. He was trying to go down, not out. We know this because of the dust. There was a fine, talc-like dust on the knees of his sweatpants. It wasn't dirt from the desert outside. It was crushed limestone, the same limestone that lines the walls of the tunnel 40 feet below. When the investigators lowered the remote crawler into the shaft, the audio feed was the first thing that went wrong. The microphone picked up a high-frequency hum that wasn't electrical. It was biological, the vibration of thousands of microscopic crystallized protein structures breaking down in a dehydrated state. The tunnel didn't lead to a panic room or a drug lab. It led to a self-contained vivarium, a sterile box within the bedrock retrofitted with HEPA filters and industrial UV lighting. On the steel table in the center of the room, there was a cage. Inside the cage was a desiccated mouse. Not a deer mouse native to New Mexico, a Paramyscus maniculatus with a genetic tag spliced into its 3rd chromosome. Someone had been breeding a vector. The microscope on the table was still running, connected to a dead laptop. The last image captured on the hard drive was a slide labeled Subject 0, Neural Decay, Reversal. Gene Hackman wasn't just suffering from Alzheimer's. He had been participating in a quiet, illegal, and horrifyingly dangerous form of gene therapy that had gone dormant for 2 decades. The tunnel wasn't a secret escape. It was a forgotten lab. This is where the story breaks your heart more than it scares you. Betsy Arakawa didn't die because she was careless. She died because she was loyal. The phone records recovered from the satellite uplink in the garage show that on the morning she collapsed, she wasn't searching for flu symptoms or hospital. She was searching for antiviral half-life and protein purification. She knew what was happening. She had opened the vivarium 2 weeks prior to clean a clogged filter, a filter she had no training to service. She inhaled the desiccated feces of a mouse that was carrying a chimeric virus, a hybrid of hantavirus and a synthetic retrovector designed to cross the blood-brain barrier. It was supposed to target the amyloid plaques in an aging brain. Instead, it targeted the alveoli in her lungs. The data on the laptop shows she realized her mistake on day 3. She tried to synthesize a counteragent using the very microscope in the tunnel. She drew her own blood. The last entry in the log is a single word, asterisk dyspnea. Asterisk she didn't wake Jean. She didn't call 911. She locked the tunnel, replaced the book on the shelf, and went to lie down in the bathroom so that if the pathogen had become airborne, he wouldn't see her die. She sealed herself away to protect a man who, by then, had forgotten she was his wife. The DNA analysis that triggered the national security alert came from the third source, the mop handle. Inside the tunnel, propped against the wall, was a janitorial mop. On the handle was a single latent print. It belonged to a man named Dr. Emery Voss, a disgraced virologist who went missing from the University of Texas system in 2005. Dr. Voss was Gene Hackman's neighbor. For 5 years, Voss had been using the actor's property as a blind spot for his research, paying for access with the promise of a miracle cure. Hackman, in the fog of his dementia, likely believed the man was just a friendly doctor giving him vitamins. Betsy knew. She had found the blueprints for the tunnel 3 years ago. She didn't call the police because the treatments, the ones she monitored and logged every night, were working. Before the infection, Jean had started remembering her name again. He had started writing poetry. The pacemaker data proves it. For the last 6 months of his life, his neural activity spikes occurred exactly 30 minutes after he visited the basement. He was getting better. The cure was working. The cost was that the lab was now a hot zone. The disturbing truth isn't that Gene Hackman had a secret. It's that he had hope. And that hope, locked in a petri dish with a failed seal, killed the only person who could still remember his face. The case file is closed, but the ground in Santa Fe is still being tested. The EPA has declared a 50-yard radius around the bookshelf a permanent exclusion zone. The tunnel has been filled with concrete, but the digital ghost remains. When the forensic accountants finally cracked the offline crypto wallet, they found a single transaction from Betsy to a medical supply company dated the day before she drove to the pet store. She had ordered a veterinary-grade portable oxygen tank. She knew she was drowning. She ordered the tank not for herself, but for the dog in the crate. She prioritized the dog's post-surgery breathing over her own, because she knew that if she took the tank, Jean would see the mask, get confused, and maybe wander into the tunnel she had fought so hard to keep him out of. Gene Hackman died in the foyer, facing the floor, not because he was lost, but because for the first time in years he had a moment of horrifying clarity. He knew she was gone. He knew the answer was below him, but he didn't have the strength to move the bookshelf alone. The last thing his pacemaker recorded wasn't a flat line. It was a spike, a desperate, frantic acceleration of the heart as he lifted his cane and tapped the floor 3 times, a signal they used to use in the old days to say, "I'm home." No one tapped back. That is what the DNA revealed. Not a monster, not a conspiracy, just the quiet biological proof that love is just a chemical reaction that, when deprived of oxygen, turns into the most toxic substance on Earth.